to Everything's Cleaner in Texas, the show where we spotlight the people, processes, and products that are helping Texas clean freaks fight dirty better. From hospital sterilization teams to cutting-edge technology, from deep cleaning secrets to industry game changers, if it's making Texas fight dirty, we're going to talk about it on this show. My name's Hank Balch, alongside Dusty Glass, and every episode we'll be diving deep with the experts, innovators, and frontline fighters who are setting the gold standard for cleanliness across the Lone Star State. Because in Texas, we don't just fight dirty, we do it big. So grab your boots, buckle up, it's time to get clean.
All right, all you clean freaks out there, I am here today with a very, very special guest from Sterile. Mr. Elvis, can you go ahead and give us a little introduction?
Yes, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Elvis Lormius. Some may call me Elvis Lormius. I'm of Haitian descent, but I go by Elvis. I'm in the U.S. now, so I'll go by Elvis. I was born in the Bahamas. I've been in this country for quite some time. I've been with Sterile for 22 years, so it's been a long journey, and I enjoy it. Every day it gets better and better. I've served in various roles. One is engineering, technician, team lead, and now for the past 6 years, I've had the pleasure of being a corporate product manager for Sterile. So that's my current role now. It's great to be here to share some insight on a topic I'm extremely passionate about.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Elvis. I mean, here in the Houston market, I think having you on and being able to really dive into some of these hot topic questions, I think is going to be really awesome for everyone listening today. So can you kind of walk me through, the importance of the power maintenance and kind of everything that's involved with like the safety and efficiency of all those critical instrumentation?
Maintenance it's crucial. When you think of your vehicle that you drive every day, it's important that you maintain it. It doesn't just apply for surgical devices. Maintenance definitely for all of your other household devices and things that you want to make certain that when you use it, it's always ready. For example, for power devices, you have to make certain that your maintenance aligns with the IFU, the instruction for use that comes with the device, right? Form, fit, and function should not change whenever a device is restored, but you also have to set a regular cadence for when you PM devices. Many IFUs will tell you, how frequent you should PM a device, but some do not. And if that's not the case, then you and your service provider can set that PM cadence. But it's always best to refer back to that of the IFU, the original document that comes with the device instruction for use. Yep.
Yeah. It's so funny that you say that, Elvis, is that I'm sure a lot of our listeners out here, and whether you're in leadership or maybe you're just a technician, if you ever cracked open some of these IFUs, I think a lot of them are taking a deep inhale and a slow exhale when they say, well, let's just go with these IFUs, right? Because some of the things you just said was that, well, sometimes they don't even say, right? They don't even have it should be PM this often, right? A lot of times they just leave you hanging, right? So can you kind of just dive in just a little bit more, on, if I'm either a new technician, doesn't really know a lot dealing with these IFUs, or maybe I'm a new leader or manager, right? And I'm just getting into these IFUs and really diving into, how I want best practice in my facility, whether it's a surgery center or a level 1 trauma center. I want to make sure that those power instrumentation are functioning to the fullest of their capabilities, right? Can you kind of just dive in a little bit more on that IFU and kind of the, what I'm looking for?
In the IFU, you will always have the technical spec page. And the technical specs will tell you critical parameters. For example, for a power device, the RPM, that's in the IFU, and additional important information is in the IFU as well. But if you think of the healthcare world, you guys are extremely busy with your day to day, and you don't have time to read IFUs, which can be anywhere from 20 to 25 pages. So it's always important to partner with a service provider that's able to assist with developing a preventive maintenance process that aligns with the IFU as well. But a simple to do that you can set when PMing devices is one, just checking if the battery pairs with a power device, if the accessories will pair with a power device, and then the RPM as well, and documenting that process.
Okay. All right. And so when I'm doing that and I'm documenting this, what are some of those common issues that I'm going to find, right? Whether it could be with like some wear. So I'm testing it. I'm looking for some of these common issues like common wear. Maybe I'm having some battery problems. Can you kind of dive into that?
Common issues. So if it's a battery driven device, you'll have electrical malfunctions, right? You can have an issue with the brains of that device and motor controller. Oftentimes you can have an issue with mechanical components, mechanical wear, normal wear and tear. Definitely battery problems. Many of those are preventable. They're preventable. For example, if you think of corrosion, corrosion comes from improper reprocessing, right? The IFE will tell you exactly how to reprocess that device. When you submerge a device, it creates corrosion. The corrosion will seize up the gears. It will seize up the bearings. It will start to increase heat generation and definitely accelerate electrical component failure as well. So it's important to follow the IFU when it comes to how you're reprocessing that device. So if it says not to submerge the device, you should not submerge the device. Battery packs, when a battery pack's left in a device and it's idling, that can cause it to malfunction as well. That's in the IFU, but it's always best, again, to refer back to that IFU. Improper sterilization of the battery pack, overheating the battery pack, that can lead to premature failure. And also, duty cycle. Ignoring that duty cycle for the device can cause significant damage. But many of the issues that you'll have with power devices, it will be fluid related, which will then eventually lead to electrical malfunction, mechanical wear, and also battery problems as well.
Well, you've seen so many power from all different kind of manufacturers, I'm sure. I'm really curious just from your 22 years of history working on this, percentage wise, and you may not even know this, but it would just be really cool if you could just put a percentage on it on how much fluid invasion or corrosion that you see. Could you put a percentage on that, on like what you think that would be?
This will just be my opinion only. I would say it's well over 80% of the devices that I've encountered had some form of fluid invasion. And it could be higher. But I'll be conservative when it comes to that. But I'll say well over 80%. Yeah.
It's funny because I've been doing this for a little while as well, and it's awesome to feel and hear that kind of information coming from an expert in the field, because I feel the same way. I feel like 80%, maybe even more, that we as leadership that are dealing, right, because we're dealing with these problems. When you have a drill that seizes up, or the best thing, or it's not the best thing, but the most frustrating thing that you run into from my perspective is you go into an operating room and the surgeon is holding a drill with a towel because it's so hot. It's burning his hands, right? And when you get that investigation going, you go through and you try to figure out, well, how did this happen, right? What's going on? Boom. It goes back to very bare bone basics. Did the drill get submerged, right? Did we follow the proper steps in the IFU? And if you read this IFU, it is wild, in my opinion. So the way that they're asking you to clean this, where you're holding your hand, under the faucet, and it's kind of splashing it up into the canal of the drill, and everything has to be facing, that. In a downward trajectory, it's really hard to follow that, is it not?
It is. It is. given the time that you guys have as well to overturn a drill to make certain that it's ready for the next procedure. Hence why the percentage that I've given to devices that I've encountered that had fluid invasion, that's why it's that, right? It's how can we quickly reprocess and clean this device and make it available for the next case. And when you're thinking about servicing the patient that's paying for that procedure and you want to do everything right, and you want to make sure that the drill is available, oftentimes you will expose it to fluid simply because you're trying to get it ready and make that device available for the patient.
Yeah. Something that you said just a moment, Elvis, that really was kind of drew my interest. You said, duty cycle. Can you, for those listeners out there that may have caught that and may not be familiar with that, can you kind of dive into what that duty cycle is and kind of explain that to me?
So duty cycle, earlier I heard you say the surgeon grabbing a wet towel and he's placing that wet towel on the drill. That's so that the exterior of the drill can cool down so it can be warm to touch and he can pick it back up, and use it again. But that duty cycle, it's for the internal components. If you think of your computers, inside of your computers, if you look at the CPU, the device that's doing the thinking, you'll see some form of heat sink on that device, helping to keep the brains of that device cool. With surgical devices, the duty cycle refers to that recommended runtime. It's not so that the drill can be comfortable for the surgeon. It's more so the components inside of the device can get a rest time. An example for a duty cycle, some manufacturers can set the duty cycle to a minute on, a minute off, and you have roughly 4 to 5 times to do that. And other manufacturers, if you have not seen examples of duty cycle, it can be 10 seconds on, 10 seconds off, right? And you have, say, 5 to 10 times to do that before you can put that device back down again. It is very, very important that you follow that recommended runtime. If not, what you'll find is, again, trying to cut corners with the wet towel and cooling down of the device. But you can cool the exterior, but the internals will still be hot. So it's designed so that the components inside of it could rest. If that doesn't happen, it will eventually lead to mechanical and electrical failure as well.
Yeah. It's so funny is that I don't think that surgeons are aware of what the duty cycle recommendations are. I know that a lot of us do get trained on these, when they're originally purchased and stuff like that. But I'm curious, so we had 80% for fluid invasion. How much do you see if you could just put a magical percentage on it? Because I would be so interested to hear, how often do you see, because you're repairing these day in and day out, you're seeing it day and day. What kind of percentage are you seeing these kind of repairs here?
So I love what I do. As for duty cycle, oftentimes when I bring up duty cycle to surgical folks like yourself and others, they have no clue what that is. It's, hey, I should be able to run this device until the battery dies, but that's not the case. The percentage of device failure that I would attribute to not following the duty cycle. Now, that's a lot higher than 80%. That's roughly 90%. It's just that the duty cycle, it's not long enough for the type of work that you guys are doing. So I would say well over 90% for device failure related to duty cycle.
Yeah, and that's why we want, experts like yourself to see these things every day, because these, regular technicians are going to listen to this, right? People in the Houston area, all the sterile processing technicians, they're going to listen to this. And even across the U.S., right? They're going to hear this. They're going to go, wow, dude, hopefully this isn't the first time they've heard about it, right? And then they're going to be frustrated a lot of times with their power. And they're going to realize, oh, well, these are some routes that I can, investigate, find out, partner, with some of these subject matter experts and really iron down some of these problems, right? So I'm curious, if we could go into some kind of tools, how would if you could break it down to me, right, on if I'm newer, on, these quality assurance and all these kind of things kind of help me be able to help any kind of facility that's, possibly listening, a younger technician, a manager, someone that's just getting into this, kind of break down how we can help them.
Quality assurance it's key. One, repairs should always restore the device to that of the manufacturer's intended use, meaning the form, fit, and function should be to that of the device's intended use, right? A strong Q&A process, extremely essential with a quality management system. Parameters, again, we'll go back to those parameters that are in the IFU. You can measure the device to those parameters that's in the IFU and just making sure that when you're testing this device, every time that you test it and what you're documenting, it ensures that the device is safe and it's reliable, right? When it's returned and reprocessed and made available for the next procedure or when it's used again.
So if I can lay out like some best practices, what would you recommend?
Best practices, and these are things that you can actually put in place tomorrow, right? The first thing would be after each procedure, you test the device to make sure that it's functioning. If it's a battery operated device, pair the battery with that device, test the device, and make sure that it's functioning. You can check to see if the trigger is sticky. Oftentimes, you can get fluid inside of the trigger cavity that can cause the trigger to stick. You can check to see if the device runs. These are just tests you can do by just pairing the battery to the device or pairing that device to the console or the processing unit that's driving it and making sure that it functions. And then most importantly, you have your drills and you also have your accessories, right? We talked about the battery. Make sure that you're testing the accessories so that you can ensure that they pair with the device. Some accessories could experience impact damage and become out of round, and they will not pair with that device. Document that process. Again, document, just making sure you're keeping a record of what current state looks like and also striving to always make that better. Repair frequency, monitor that as well. And then also monitor spend. You can see a direct correlation between how often the device is used and spend as well. All right. And then the PM portion of it, the PMI, preventive maintenance, I'm going to emphasize on that. We have to make certain that there's always a PM process in place to prevent reoccurring damages as well. And segregating devices, if you've uncovered a device has failed, segregating that device, set it aside, and make certain that it gets restored and repaired. All right. And lastly, what I'll say is choose a vendor that is going to prioritize patient safety, also making sure that devices are restored to that of its original intended use. Form, fit, and function is identical to that device. Those are the things that I believe you guys, meaning the folks in SPD, the folks in the healthcare, can implement, tomorrow to make certain that devices are procedure ready.
So, a couple of things that you're talking about here, I kind of want to dive into. So let's say my technician doesn't really, let's just say they're new or maybe a new manager or whatever the case may be. They're not used to probably really testing these. How do you even go about that? Like how do we even, if they're not, they're just listening to this the first time right here in the Houston area or in the US, like how do they get that information? Because you bring in all these things of like the trigger is not sticking, put a battery on it. How am I as a technician? I put a battery on the drill. How do I know if it's meeting those RPMs that it needs to do?
Lead parameters are in the IFU, and if you don't have time to read the IFU, and I'm certain you guys do not, it's always great to partner with a vendor that can assist with the steps, the checkpoints that I've just mentioned. At Sterile, it is something that we do and we will continue to do, is making sure that you guys know how to reprocess these devices according to that of the IFU. We have persons in roles that are tasked with whether it's a device in a specific category, they know exactly what to look for and how to help with developing some type of inspection process in SPD. So I would say it's just partnering with a vendor that cares. Not saying that the rest do not, but making sure that you have a vendor that's willing to train you on proper care and handling, which is derived from the IFU, and that's willing to teach you what to look for, what's abnormal and what's normal as well. It's that vendor is key.
Yeah. So you kind of talked into, what I think a lot of people are, especially if you're in leadership or you manage a department or even if you're wanting to move up and get in there, you spoke about budgets and planning and kind of, can you kind of go into that on this power equipment and what do we look for? If we're just hearing about this, you're just wanting to move up or whatever the case may be, or maybe you just never really have dove into it. Can you break that down for me?
Again, I'm going to go back to partnering with a vendor. You're partnering with a vendor that's focused on tracking preventable trends. Earlier, I said many of the issues that we see with power devices or other surgical devices, they're preventable. They're preventable. So those can be tracked. If you partner with a vendor that is tracking that type of data, tracking to see how often we're seeing failures that are preventable, right? Tracking the costs that's associated with that, using data from your facility to help drive down costs, to help with making cost savings decisions and help with reducing operational expenses. I think it's the vendor that you partner with and them being willing and able to use your data to help with saving money and also making sure that you guys become more efficient.
Yeah. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to break it down for everybody. Break it down on the easy to understand level here. So what you're telling me is that when I need to use the data that I have, right? If my physician has no idea what the duty cycle is and they're going to run that for 30, 40 minutes, right? In that orthopedic case, that I need to get that documented, right? And I need to associate that wear and tear, right, with a numerical number that it's going to cost to repair. And then that is going to arm me, right? Either the manager, the supervisor, the director, the system, the technician, right? Empowering the technician to be able to say, hey, these are some of the things that we're dealing with on why maybe this is why we're having to turn over all of our drills, right? Because they're continuously damaged all the time, or every time that we get one back from repair, we have another one go down, right? And we could associate all of those costs with preventable, right? Because we talked a little bit, and I know they're not official stats, but I'm going to take 22 years of experience. I'm going to take that all day long, right? 80% possible fluid invasion, 90%, possible duty cycle and wear and tear. If all of us listening tonight can take some of those things and iron those guys down, your orthopedic problems, the days of the turnover of these power drills, or the headache that you're dealing with every single day of turning them over, wondering if they're going to, if another facility is going to allow you to borrow a drill to meet your case volume, right? You're saying it could easily be solved. Is that what I'm hearing?
That is exactly what I'm saying. It can easily be solved. One, I always like to say when you partner with a vendor, it's our job, by our meaning everyone that touches the drill, right? So if you think of fluid related damages and failure, we can link that to a certain section and at your facility. We could look at heat related damages and quantify all of that so that you can bring that dollar amount to those persons to say, hey, this is how, when we seek not to improve in this area, this is how it's impacting our institution. And that data, again, it has to be captured and used in such a way that it can help you guys with decreasing that cost. And that's where, your vendor comes into play with making sure that they capture the data, utilize it to provide insight on, how it can help you guys decrease costs and become more efficient. But definitely we can associate multiple different failures to certain process points as well.
Wow, that's just mind blowing. It's so awesome I wish I'd have known about that 15 years ago. I wish I was listening to this podcast right now 15 years ago, and we had you on here and, was being able to break some of these things down. It's really amazing. Elvis, thank you so much for coming on here. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate everything that you're doing, all the hard work and all the information that you're so graciously giving us.
I want to thank you for having me. And it was probably several months ago we met, and I'm extremely passionate about, helping the healthcare industry solve many of the problems that they experience on a day-to-day and just continue to seek to get better at it. So I want to thank you for inviting me on this podcast and thank everyone for listening. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're out there and you're dealing with issues with power, just like I would imagine 80 to 90% of the United States are every single day, please dive into this. Elvis is a subject matter expert in this area and has given some really great tools and tips out there. If you're in the Houston area, please reach out to Houston Sterile Processing Professionals Alliance, HSPPAchapter.com. We can get you some more information. We can get you joined, and we have wonderful experts like Mr. Elvis and all these other folks that we're excited to bring to you and sharpen your skills. Looking forward to meeting with you again, Elvis, and hopefully being able to do this again.
Likewise, anytime.
All right, if you loved today's conversation, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review, because this fight against bioburden is as big as Texas. If you've got a sterile processing tip, story, or even product that's making it easier for Texas clean freaks to fight dirty, we want to hear about it. Connect with us on social media anywhere you find Beyond Clean. That's Facebook, LinkedIn, X, and YouTube. Until next time, lasso up those dirty trays and saddle up those sterilizers, because we're about to show the world why everything's cleaner in Texas.